Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. I come to you today from the traditional territories of the Mississauga, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat. Je vous adresse aujourd'hui des territoires traditionnels des Mississauga, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, et Huron-Wendat. I felt very compelled today to have this press conference after hearing, watching, witnessing the history that was being made down in the United States yesterday. First, let me congratulate President Biden and President Harris on their inauguration and to wish them well in the very important work that they have to do, not only to heal the divisions in American society, but also to renew their relationships with their partners, including us, in a multilateral world to tackle the challenges and seize the opportunities that we have at this moment. What I saw yesterday when I heard President Biden speak, and more than anything, when I saw him act, was a very potent reminder that leadership is possible, that ambition is possible. Yesterday, in fact, what I was struck by was that I was witnessing, we were seeing the United States overtake Canada as a more progressive country. Yesterday, what we saw were words converted into real action. And yesterday, what we saw was a portrait in leadership. For those who perhaps didn't tune in as I did yesterday, let's just take a few of the highlights, because let's keep in mind that yesterday President Biden signed 17 executive orders, 17 on his first day, when normally there is only one that is signed on the first day in office. President Biden appointed a COVID response coordinator to create a unified national response strategy at the federal level. And the coordinator said that this was because a comprehensive approach was lacking and that a national strategy was necessary to provide a roadmap to guide America out of the worst public health crisis in a century. President Biden also signed executive orders re-entering the Paris Climate Agreement, because he said that he wanted the United States to be in a position to assume a role of global leadership on the climate. He canceled a Keystone XL pipeline permit. He appointed a climate czar on the climate. And that is a position that will sit within the National Security Council and the Inner Cabinet, recognizing the importance and recognizing the security threat that the climate and our warming planet poses. He also imposed a moratorium on oil and gas leases in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge as well. Also on social issues, on social justice issues, President Biden very powerfully signaled his commitment to dismantling systemic racism and racial discrimination, first by recognizing it, and then by committing to root it out of all federal programs and institutions as a matter of urgency. By contrast, we've seen with our government on the same themes, the COVID response, no national coordinator, no national strategy, no national roadmap. On the climate, in the same period of time, approving 3 new drilling exploration projects off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, rejecting increasing our Paris climate targets, lobbying to keep the Keystone XL pipeline, buying a pipeline and supporting the construction of other pipelines, and no dedicated minister. On dismantling systemic racism, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, said that he would craft a work plan last summer, if you recall, to build, quote, strong policies to tackle racism that would include reforms to police and the justice system, protecting foreign workers, and legislation expanding First Nations policing of their own communities. We haven't seen that. I'm here today to say that Canada can have the same ambition, that we can have the same ambition that we saw on display yesterday when President Biden spoke about a restless, optimistic, and bold leadership. This is exactly what we can and should be looking for at this crossroads moment in Canada. On the COVID response, Greens have called for many months for exactly the same type, excuse me, of intergovernmental COVID-19 task force to create a nationally coordinated response, because we know that this is not the best we can do. On global leadership on the climate, we've called for the cancellation of all new pipeline projects and oil and gas exploration. We are the only federal party that is calling for the cancellation of all new pipeline projects. We've called for an increase of our greenhouse gas reduction target to match other countries and to meet our obligations and just to do our fair share. And we have called for the appointment of a climate minister for exactly the same reasons that President Biden chose to appoint one himself, because we know that what we are doing now is not the best that we can do. On dismantling systemic racism, we've called for the implementation of the calls to action and justice from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Commission. We've called for the implementation of the recommendations of the United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent, and all again because we know that what we are doing now is not the best that we can do. And for those who say that it is not possible, for those who say that this is outside of the remit of the federal government, I tell you that these orders covered many areas that are reserved for states. And yet the president has said he will try. He will work to do what he can with the tools that he has to make a difference in the areas that matter most. And so my call to people in Canada is to say, let us be bold. Let us be optimistic. Let us also have the same restless sense of ambition for ourselves that we have traditionally had and that we need to have in this time. And let us insist that those who choose to lead us are going to do so, and that they are going to fulfill the true promise of our country, and that we will have nothing to be ashamed of and no reason to hang our heads when we compare ourselves to our neighbors to the south or any other country in terms of our commitment to protecting people in Canada, to being ambitious on our social programs and on the climate. We can do so much better. Et en français, hier, nous avons encore reçu un rappel que le leadership est possible, que l'ambition est possible. Hier, on a vu les États-Unis surpasser le Canada comme un pays progressif avec un gouvernement fédéral, un gouvernement et un président progressif. Hier, nous avons vu les mots convertis dans des vraies actions. Le président, sur le jour 1, dans ses premiers actes comme président des États-Unis, il a décidé d'annoncer la création d'une équipe pour créer une réponse nationale unifiée et coordonnée et compréhensive sur la pandémie de COVID-19, parce qu'il reconnaît que ça manquait et que c'était nécessaire de créer une feuille de route pour guider les États-Unis. Sur le climat, il a annoncé que les États-Unis seraient de nouveau un membre du accord de Paris. Il avait annulé le Keystone XL pipeline. Il a nommé son czar et puis il a mis dans son cabinet. Il a reconnu que la crise climatique est une menace aux sécurités des États-Unis. Et il a suspendu des projets de forage dans l'Arctique. Sur le racisme systémique, sur la discrimination systémique, il a annoncé qu'il y aurait toute une revue de tous les programmes, toutes les institutions fédérales pour assurer que le racisme systémique est éliminé de tous les programmes et toutes les institutions. En contraste, notre gouvernement sur le COVID, pas de coordinateur, pas de stratégie nationale, pas de feuille de route. Sur le climat, nous avons donné l'appui à 3 projets de forage exploratoire extra-côtier. Nous avons refusé d'augmenter notre cible pour réduire nos gaz à effet de serre. Nous avons poussé pour la continuation du Keystone XL pipeline et on continue de construire des autres pipelines aussi. Et nous n'avons pas de ministre dédié sur le climat. Sur le racisme systémique, l'été dernier, le Premier ministre avait promis de créer un plan pour construire des fortes politiques pour démonter le racisme. Il avait promis des réformes de notre police et système de justice aussi et d'améliorer les protections pour nos travailleurs de l'étranger. Et aussi d'améliorer l'autonomie des Premières Nations pour leur système de police. Rien n'est fait. Je suis ici aujourd'hui pour dire que nous pouvons aussi avoir la même ambition que le président des États-Unis. Sur le COVID, le Parti vert a déjà dit depuis plusieurs mois qu'on devait avoir une task force intergouvernementale sur le COVID pour créer une réponse nationale coordonnée et compréhensive. Parce que c'est clair qu'on doit et on peut faire meilleur que ce qu'on fait en ce moment. Nous avons dit aussi que sur le climat, c'est le moment du Canada d'assumer un rôle de leadership pour annuler tous les nouveaux projets de pipeline, tous les projets d'exploration de ressources fossiles et aussi augmenter notre cible pour réduire les gaz à effet de serre pour au moins être au niveau des autres pays. Et sur le démontage du racisme systémique, on répète encore nos appels pour le respect et l'implémentation des appels à action et justice de notre commission, de vérité et de réconciliation et des femmes et filles meurent et non trouvées. Il faut implémenter aussi les recommandations de notre groupe d'experts de les Nations Unies sur les peuples de descendance africaine, parce qu'on peut absolument faire meilleur. Et pour ceux qui disent que c'est une question de juridiction, je le rejette. Il y a aussi des questions de juridiction aux États-Unis. Il y a aussi des compétences réservées aux États. Mais le président a dit clairement hier que ça ne suffit pas que le président et que l'exécutif va faire ce qui est nécessaire, ce qui est possible pour assurer que le gouvernement assure que la justice du climat, la justice sociale soit une priorité pour son administration. Alors, on peut faire mieux et je dis au peuple au Canada que c'est le moment de retourner à une vraie politique progressive, des actions concrètes sur des enjeux progressifs, sur le climat, sur les enjeux sociaux. On peut le faire avec du leadership et c'est le moment d'insister que nos leaders fassent tout ce qui est nécessaire. Merci et avec ça, je prends les questions.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand feature and also let us know which media outlet you are with. Alors, pour demander une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction de lever la main, puis identifiez ainsi que votre média. Et ça va être une question, puis un suivi. One question and one follow-up. So, David Curtin, good morning. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Paul. The first question I just want to ask you about is Keystone XL. This pipeline would have been the first American pipeline that would have been carbon neutral. um, the shipping of the oil would have not generated any emissions. So through carbon offsets and eventually through powering the pipeline through renewable resources. So I'm just wondering, you know, in a world where perfection is sometimes unachievable, does the cancellation of this pipeline represent a missed opportunity? Because it might have put more pressure on other oil and gas producing industries to achieve this standard. So I'm wondering, you know, we can't always achieve perfection. And so is this a missed opportunity to decarbonize oil and gas?
The missed opportunity was for the government of Alberta to spend the $1.5 billion that they invested in this pipeline, and the loan guarantees that went along with that, knowing full well that were a democratic government to come into administration, rather, to come into place in the United States, whether it was President Biden or many of the other people on the ticket. Just to underline that, this was a very pan-democratic commitment that was made. The wasted opportunity was to not spend that money more wisely on diversifying the economy of Alberta. I was very encouraged to see that Premier Kenney, in the early days of the pandemic, announced the creation of an economic recovery council with the mandate of diversifying the economy of Alberta, exactly because he recognized that without any judgment attached to it, the fact is that the fossil fuel industry and sector is a sector in an irreversible decline, and that Alberta needs to diversify its economy. And so that is the real missed opportunity. Beyond the fact that, no, this is not a climate neutral project. Anything that encourages increased extraction from the oil sands, that increases our ability to extract oil when we already need to be winding down that sector, is not something that that can be encouraged. And beyond those facts, there are also the environmental degradation issues. There are also the issues of Indigenous sovereignty on both sides of the border that had not been addressed. And so this was a project that was very, very damaged from the beginning. And let's keep in mind the reason, and Premier Kenney said this yesterday, that the government of Alberta stepped in is because this project was considered to be so toxic and so risky that no private money was willing to invest in it. And so the people who are let down were the workers, workers like my brother who worked out in the oil patch, who really count on their government to make responsible decisions about their future. They're looking for safe jobs, stable jobs. They're looking for a sense of security about their future. And it is the responsibility of the federal government and the provincial government to work together to make sure that happens through a green recovery and through a green economy and through economic diversification, which has got to be part of the plan for Alberta going forward, and the prairies and other provinces that rely on resource extraction.
But canceling Keystone XL doesn't stop this oil from moving south via other means, such as rail cars, such as tankers traveling through communities. There are issues about the safety of that as well. And so here you have a pipeline that the shipping of the oil could have been carbon neutral. So again, is it a missed opportunity in a world where canceling this project still doesn't stop this oil from moving south by other means? Again, you know, I know we want a world where we achieve perfection, but you know, in the reality is we can't always achieve that perfection that we seek.
We are not seeking any such thing, and I have to push back on some of your premises there. This is not a safe, secure way to transport oil, and this is the reason that the Obama administration and their environmental agencies did not support the project. We know that pipelines leak, they break at any given moment. There are leaks all along pipeline lines. We know that bitumen is something that is very, well, let's just say it's impossible to clean. When it spills, it is impossible to clean. And then we cannot and never can, whether on this side of the border or the other, ever look at these projects outside of the context of the indigenous communities that they impact. We heard very clearly, and the administration, the Obama administration and the incoming Biden administration heard very clearly for a long time that this did not have the support of those communities. And so all of those factors have to be taken into account. This is not, I will repeat, it is not a clean project. It is not a safe project. It is not a project that respects Indigenous sovereignty. And so this is not somewhere that our governments, whether federal or provincial, should have been investing their money and should have been investing their political capital.
Thank you, David. Does anybody else have a question? No? David, do you want to ask another question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I want to ask you about the Coastal GasLink pipeline. This is the pipeline that would, take natural gas, I believe from Alberta and BC into
Alberta heading toward BC to the coast.
Yes, for the LNG Canada project, a big project out in BC.
Mm-hmm.
The NDP and the Greens, that you both support the cancellation of Keystone and also the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. But where you differ is the Coastal GasLink pipeline there. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that for a second. What the NDP is saying is that the difference with this pipeline, the Coastal GasLink pipeline, is that BC has a climate plan that would mitigate any sort of increased emissions. So I'm just wondering, what you think about that. If you can, give your views on that. Maybe the Greens have changed their opinion and, in a world where we're not going to get off fossil fuels today, this is a good transition fuel that we and the world economy needs.
Okay. Well, breaking news, we have not changed our view on the LNG project. And you're absolutely right. At the moment, we are the only political party that has come out federal political party that has come out very clearly saying that we do not support the LNG project. I don't see actually how you can be against Keystone and TMX and be in support of that project, because really the issues are the same. First and foremost, there's the issue of Indigenous sovereignty. And we saw in the protests of last year that there is not Indigenous support, particularly with the Wet'suwet'en and their territories amongst the traditional leadership for that project. And we saw all across the country the Wet'suwet'en land defenders protesting and drawing attention to that. We also know that the gas, it is not, liquefied natural gas is not a transitional fuel. The process of extracting it is extremely carbon intensive. The methane that is reduced is 85 times more potent than CO2 in terms of its impact on our environment. The process of fracking causes earthquakes. It causes the poisoning of aquifers. It causes the poisoning of groundwaters. It is not environmentally safe. It is not compatible with reducing our greenhouse gases, and it encroaches on Indigenous sovereignty, as the Supreme Court has recognized. And so it is very confusing to me how any party who is committed to the climate, who is committed to respecting Indigenous sovereignty and committed to the environment could support that project. We are focused on the jobs of the future. We are joining, we want Canada to join the United States, the 27 countries of the European Union, many countries in East Asia who are moving their economies toward the green economy of the future that creates the jobs that are stable, that are safe, that pay more money, and that are directly transferable with the skills that oil patch workers have today. Canada is being left behind in the global race to be competitive in the green economy. We are being left behind in the global race to transition our economy. The United States has made a very powerful declaration that they intend to lead that. So let's focus on things like a North American carbon border. Let's focus on cooperating on a green recovery with the United States, which they have already committed to. And let's focus on investing in clean tech, which is going to be a $3 trillion US globally sector by 2030. Let's get our piece of that pie for our workers. Let's focus on the jobs that are going to help us get out of this pandemic and recover as quickly as possible. Greens are focused on the future, and our government is lagging in the past. And we saw that yesterday with Joe Biden. We saw what a vision for the future looks like. We saw what a positive, optimistic, doable vision for a green recovery and green economy looks like.
Thank you, David. If there are no more questions, are there any more questions? Does anybody else have any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a encore des questions, s'il vous plaît? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. This ends this news conference. Merci à tout le monde pour venir. C'est la fin du conférence maintenant. Merci, Madame Paul. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.